In the Kuta Sichas Cheli Gimel, there's the famous Sicha about Sfira Saimer if a person crosses the Kav HaTairich. If a person crosses the international dateline in the middle of Sfira, so the Rebbe paskins that you have to continue counting your own Sfira, even though it'll be different than the place that you will come to. And B'meila, the Rebbe comes out with a psak din that the Shvuas, you will have to have your own Shvuas. The Rebbe is Masbir Ba'ariches in England and goes into Chassidus into his whole Inyan. Then in Chelik Zayin, the Hisofes, page 288, the whole Sicha is printed over again. So people ask, how did that happen? Why did that Sicha get printed over again? So I just want to tell you that when they're preparing the Chelik Zayin to print, so every Sefer of the Sichas has a lot of Hisofes in the back, that in addition to the Sichas that came out that year, or those few years, the series of Likutei Sichas, every volume has Hisofas, that there are other Sichas or other letters that have a shaykhs to those times of the year, those parshas of the week. So those that were available at that time were added as Hisofas to Likutei Sichas. And would go give into the Rebbe these letters, these Hisofas, and the Rebbe would send it out, and this would become the Hisofas. We happened to get a letter that the Rebbe wrote Tovshin Tes, before the Nesias, he had Tovshin Tes, to Rebbe Tzalel Vilshansky, who lived in Australia. He came to the Frierdiker Rebbe for Shavuos, Tovshin Tes, and he crossed the dateline. He went across in the middle of Sfira. So then they told him all kinds of shaylas and dinim. So when he came back, he wrote to the Rebbe, who was only the son-in-law of the Frierdiker Rebbe at that time, to explain to him what is this whole union of all of a sudden a day changes and you're back a day, earlier a day, and Shavuos. So he wrote to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe answered him a very long letter, Poshet, explaining simply what the union of the Kav HaTairich is, and all that's dodim, all the sides to the Shaila, whether you should count your own Sfira, not count your own Sfira, count both Sfiras, and comes to Shavuos, how should you do Shavuos, all kinds of possibilities. Very Gishmake letter. But the Rebbe, at the end of the letter, doesn't come to the same conclusion like in the Sicha in Chele Gimel. There, in Chele Gimel comes to the conclusion clearly that you have to keep your own Shavuos. But there, he remains with a suffix exactly what to do. Now we'd like to print that letter because that letter explains the Inya very good. But we had a problem. How can we print that letter when the maskon in the letter is different than the Sicha? So we specifically sent in that letter to the Rebbe and wrote to the Rebbe, we'd like to print this letter in the Isofis, but the maskon is different, so what should we do? Should we not print it, or what should we do? So the Rebbe was magi a little bit, made a few changes in the letter itself, and he sent it out, and he wrote we should print it. But the problem we have that Lepeil in the Sicha, in Chele Gimel, the Maskona is different. So the Rebbe said, this is what you should add. You should write after this letter these words. Michtov hanal usvara reshena v'shakla v'tari. That this letter that we just printed is just the first svara, and it's just a discussion. And later on, the Rebbe, he's writing this himself, but he's writing what we should write, that he looked into it again, discussed it again, the bola maskona, and he did come to a maskona. And then l'shleimus hadover, to make it complete, we will repeat the Rishima, which means the Sicha that was printed in Chele Gimel, so even though it was printed already, and we should reprint the Sicha. So it was the Rebbe's idea that we should print the letter, but in order not to be a contradiction to the Sicha, we should, after that, write these words, that this was only a Svara, a Shakla V'Tarya, but later the Rebbe came to a Maskona, and we are reprinting the Maskona, and we reprinted the whole Sicha that is printed right in Chele Gimel. That's why their Sicha is reprinted here in the Yisofis, because if we would just print that letter, it would seem a contradiction, but now we understand the whole Seder. This was the way the Rebbe thought first, having a suffix, and later on he came to a Maskana.